Hello, this is Tony Hall here in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. I'm talking to Maisoon Rice. This is about our fifth discussion, and we talk regularly about Gaza and the Middle East and the whole larger context, the legal context, the historical context. And yesterday there was a Security Council resolution, kind of a disgraceful moment at the UN, it seems to me. Russia and China did not veto the motion. They abstained and it went through. So now the Trump's 20-point peace plan, so-called peace plan, is now the basis of a UN Security Council resolution. And people are saying, with good cause, that this is kind of like a throwback to the era of the Balfour Declaration, where Palestinians have no say in this discussion. This is a colonial deal worked out by the Übermenschen, the master race people like the Tony Blairs and Netanyahus and Donald Trumps of the world. And it's putting Palestinian people once again under some kind of colonial construction where they are the children to be managed and taken care of and eliminated because they're wards of some higher authority. And it's a really ugly repeat of history. So Maisoon comes from that part of the world. Her family grew up, her father in Palestine, her mother in Pakistan. And what do you think of this Security Council resolution and what's going on in Gaza these days and the deeper historical context and framework of it all?
Well, I joined the denunciation of this so-called Security Council. Once again, the United Nations is being used by the usual suspects, by the Zionists, to subjugate and enslave the Palestinian people. I mean, I want to ask a question. Who has the right to speak on behalf or determine the future of the Palestinians? Who gave America the right? Who gave the United Nations the right? I mean, back in 2024 at the ICJ, there was a barrister, I can't remember his name, he was a British barrister, and he basically stated that this whole shenanigans with British colonialism and their mandate in Palestine was illegal. Under international law, it was declared illegal. What right does the UN have to determine the future of our people without even consulting us? I don't give a damn about all the members who voted for this. The majority of them are Zionists anyway. Majority of them are in the pockets of the Israelis. Majority of them are the kind of people who've been blackmailed and cajoled into doing what Israel wants them to do due to the Epstein scandal. No, America doesn't have a right. Who gave Trump the right to determine the future of my people? He thinks he's the king of the world, and that he can do and say what he wants, and he can declare war on whoever he wants. He can arrange assassinations on whoever he wants. And here he is. He's got this farcical United Nations Security Council passed through the UN. And the Israelis always accuse the UN of being biased towards the Palestinians. I mean, to me that is such a joke. I mean, first of all, it was the UN that created the State of Israel, illegally, by the way. It was the United Nations that gave away more than half of Palestine to the Jewish colonialists who came from Eastern Europe. Who gave them the right to do that?
And it was the United Nations that
We didn't vote for the United Nations.
United Nations created the Genocide Convention, which is, clear that genocide is taking place, and the United Nations law on this matter is being flouted. I mean, Maisoon, since 1492, of course, European governments took over trusteeship over most of the people in the world. Most of the planet, of the globe, was divided into the colonies of Britain, of France, of Portugal, of Belgium, and on and on. This created an era where people became colonial subjects. They didn't have any governance over themselves. They became, in Congo, for instance, sort of like slaves in the rubber trade. When Leopold, the King of Belgium, was talking about civilizing these savages, at the Berlin Conference, control over peoples throughout the world, the vast majority of the peoples of the world, were transformed into people who had no vote, no say in their own government, no say on how their own natural resources would be disposed of. In India, throughout Indochina, throughout Africa. Interestingly, the Western Hemisphere has this sort of history emanating out of the revolutionary history of the United States in an ironic way that was sort of copied by the Bolivarian Revolution in the early 1800s. But this transformation of people into colonial subjects, this has been one of the darkest phases of history. It involved slavery. It involved, defining people by their skin color. It involved all sorts of scientific theories about how some races are superior and above others. And when they created the United Nations, the supposition was all this would come to an end. And then there was the concept that, well, people have the right of self-determination. We're not going to do this any longer to decide, well, these people are like children, they're low down in the scale of savagery and civilization, and they have to be governed because they're not able to govern themselves. And so many kings and governments were given the power to be their governors and did, terrible things. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. But the formation of the United Nations was kind of meant to be, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. But interestingly, the Jewish state of Israel, it wasn't a power seeking decolonization. It was an expression of the essence of the colonial imperial movement. From 1492 till 1948, there was Palestinian people, Arab people dominating Palestine, and then Israel was sort of given an extra dose of imperial power, empire-like power over the Palestinians. And it was almost a caricature, from 1948 onward, the genocide, the immediate genocide, the effort to eliminate Palestinians, to make them have to leave, to put them in refugee camps, to transform them into stateless people, because there was supposed to be an Arab state that never was created. They still talk about it as this two-state solution. Where is it supposed to be? But anyway, we are reverting back at the end of 2025 to basically like the Balfour Declaration, and making Tony Blair, the spokesman for the City of London and the Rothschilds and all of those banking conglomerates based in London that still seem to be the dominant banking conglomerate even over Wall Street, to empower like a throwback to the British Empire in 1917 when the Balfour Declaration was created, and to treat Palestinians as non-people, like baby people, like not quite yet ready to be human people who can't have a say in their own governing structure, who have to be handed over to the likes of Tony Blair and Netanyahu and Trump. What a spectacle this is. What a regressive act in history.
I mean, we know the expression that, history tends to repeat itself. I mean, it's a joke. It's been happening, thousands of years. History repeats itself. You get colonialists going from, taking one country and then being defeated. One empire rises and then it falls. There's a rise and fall to every empire, and there will come a time, mark my words, when the empire of Israel will fall, and so will the United States, and America's empire will fall from within, because it's allowed Jewish power and Jewish domination to completely take over its government, its entire country. They run all their political rulers, their institutions, corporations, their banking system. It's all been run by the same entity that the world community has been rewarding these last 2 years by allowing them to carry out this Holocaust, genocide, ecocide, infanticide, femicide, domicide, democide, educide as well. I mean, they have thrown everything into the mix. This is unprecedented. This is far, far worse than anything that the alleged German Nazis did to the Jews during World War II. What the Israelis have done to my people far exceeds anything that the Germans purportedly did to the Europeans during World War II. Colonialism repeats itself. It's never ended. Empires rise, empires fall. Then you get another empire that rises, and to this day, the present empire is the Israeli Empire, which it calls the Greater Eretz Israeli Empire. We've already heard declarations. I mean, we heard it at first from Donald Trump, even before he became president, where he stated very shrewdly, Israel is such a small little country, it really needs to expand. And that was a clue, that was a hint as to what was being, planned ahead. And that's exactly what has happened. They've taken over Syria. They want to take over the whole of Jordan. Of course, they're taking over the West Bank at the moment. And, all these Europeans who, spew outrage about Israel, what it's doing in the West Bank, just falls on deaf ears. United Nations isn't interested. United Nations has never honestly been interested in the rights and self-determination of the Palestinian people. If they did, and if they did, conform to their own Geneva Convention, they would have acted physically to stop this carnage. Once upon a time, when things like this happened, like they've done in Lebanon and also in parts of Africa, they sent in UNIFIL, they sent in the United Nations forces. We didn't get this in the case of the Palestinians. Why is that? And now with this new UN Security Council resolution, they're planning to send foreign troops who are all working for the Israelis and the Americans to come in and bully people in Gaza into submission. They think that that's the best thing to do. And like I said, the Israelis have got carte blanche to take over the West Bank, which they are doing. They've already expelled around 70,000 Palestinians in the West Bank, making them refugees in their own homeland. And some of these refugees were made refugees pre-1948, when they were thrown out of the areas that the United Nations gave to the Israelis. So, 3 times, my people are being made refugees. And the same goes for the people in Gaza. They were told, you've got to move south. You've got to move to the middle. Then you've got to move to the south. Then they kept declaring, this isn't a safe zone. This isn't a safe zone. Go to the safe zone. They go to the safe zone and they get bombed at the safe zone. So they move on to another supposed safe zone, and the same thing happens. They're bombed in the safe zones. Nowhere in Gaza is safe for Palestinians, nowhere. And now the West Bank isn't safe at all. And then there's a lot of, I don't know if you're up to the news. Did you hear about the mysterious flight that arrived in South Africa? I can't remember how many. I think it's nearly 200 Palestinians were on that plane, and at first the South African government refused to accept them because it was strange that this unannounced, undocumented flight arrived in South Africa. And I warned people about this because I saw something a few months ago when again a mysterious flight arrived in a Latin American country with Palestinian refugees. We weren't given their names or anything like that. Their identities were not given. All we were told was that they are refugees from Palestine. Now, these people who are, they are being forced to go on these flights. This is ethnic cleansing. This is ethnic transfer. And these people are probably, I mean, I would say with certainty, are the abductees that were taken by the Israelis. I can't remember the exact figure, but thousands of people from Gaza disappeared. They've also calculated that I think is it around 10,000 children are missing in Gaza, or maybe it's a lower figure, but anyway, it's in the thousands. And these people that are being put on the flights, they are being ethnically cleansed from their country.
I don't really like the term cleanse because there's something that sounds sanitary about it. It's like a very dirty act. It's like a genocidal act. It's, yes, to eliminate people, but to talk about it as some kind of cleansing operation seems to me to be just
Well,
too ironic.
for
It's
them
a
it is,
filthy,
for them it
dirty
is
type
cleansing.
of operation, the kind of ultimate bigotry. We don't like these kind of people. We don't want to be anywhere near them. We want to get them as far away on the other side of the world as we can. And the rest will kill, and that's what we've been seeing. Will destroy their capacity to live there. Will destroy the region, the natural
Well,
life-giving attributes of the region,
you've
and the
got,
plumbing and the sewage and the healthcare, and we'll bomb the doctors, and we'll bomb the journalists, and
journalists.
we'll starve the people, and this idea that Maisoon, that okay, this has been going on for since time immemorial. One civilization rises and then another one comes along, and they replace one another, and one rises and the other falls. But we're in a different time now, where the whole global structure of things is so interactive, is so connected, that the idea that we'll just China will disappear and something else will come along, or Venezuela will disappear and something else will come along. Like, it's not like that anymore. We're such an interdependent globe, and so if weapons of mass destruction and bad things happen, it's not clear that the whole thing goes down. Once one system starts to fall apart and another system starts to fall apart, that it creates a global sequence of events, a domino effect. So we really are not in that position anymore that we can just imagine there's going to be some place that survives, that comes along to create the basis of the next civilization. And this global phenomena of organized Jewry as a global group, and this Zionism takes on a global movement, and it dominates, in many societies. It's not just a matter of controlling the United States so the United States can be the backup to the Israel armed forces, which is at the head of the spear of the delivery of genocide. No, the United States is very much, it's not just complicit in the genocide, it's a partner
Partner. It
in
is.
the genocide. And this U.S. Israeli connection has such spokes and ramifications and networks throughout the world that we're looking at something that is I mean, in a certain sense, Palestine is the focus of the world right now, and this genocide is a sneak preview of the world we have arrived at, the world that is ours from here on in. It seems that clearly the people behind this genocide, whether it be Planeteer or the government of Canada or the various arms agencies or Wall Street or the Rothschild bankers, the City of London, however we conceive of it, there's such a enormous concentration of power behind this genocide. It expresses so many elements of our power system. All we have is the reality that we can see that people by and large are decent and they can't stand what we're seeing, and it makes the people behind it, they are monsters. They are demonstrating that this is not a human type of operation that we've really ever seen before. It's just so drastic and extremist. So we're sort of in this global fight, this fight for the future of the world. And this genocide, connected to all the financial goings on, this genocide connected to the exploitation of children, the mass murder of children, the exploitation of children for sex, for their organs, for their, the type of hormones they can give to make old people feel young again, and this complete parasitical turning on children, whether in the Epstein case, the Trump-Epstein phenomena, the reality that getting pedophiles to express their love of having sex with children is a great way to blackmail people, is a great way to control. You can pretty well see with Netanyahu back and forth in the White House that they're playing Trump, that they have stuff on Trump, that Trump is being blackmailed and is subject to this whole Epstein affair. We see that Epstein, with his dealings with Mongolia or Cote d'Ivoire or Putin, that he is a big-time player. And whether or not you call him Mossad, it's very clear that this was an operation being done for the benefit of Israel. And this is obviously part of the structure when we see Netanyahu getting all these standing ovations in Congress. Those people have had sex with children. They've been taped having sex with children. They're paid off. They're bribed, and we're sort of at the center point of such an enormous facing a reckoning with who we are as humanity, what we have become, what we look like, what it looks like where we're headed, because it does look like we're headed towards very dire outcomes, which, this would only be the beginning if they get away with this, what comes next. Or there is this other side of it that human beings, like average human beings, decent human beings all over the world, get together in the streets and they make it clear they can't stand it anymore. And they're not going to just turn on CBS and see Barry Weiss, speaking as the editor-in-chief and watch shows about how dastardly Muslims are and how they're such a terrorist people. And, this is clearly the next line of defense for Israel to build up the Islamophobia, which they, worked on so hard in 9/11, and get people hating Muslims and condemning Hamas and condemning terrorists and, making all this kind of sort of gutter social science that they attempt to do.
Tony, I had an argument with somebody who used to be a long-time friend of mine, He was a British guy, sort of works for peace and all this business. And I got into an argument with him about China and Russia. He just thinks that, China is going to be the savior of the world. And I said to him, look, you're living in cuckoo land. Both China and Russia are members of the globalist movement. They may be on the other side, but they're all serving the same agenda, the same purpose. Now, Vanessa Beeley did a show on a UK column where a headline of one of her articles was, why did China and Russia abstain at the UNSC and sell out Palestine to the Trump peace scam? Well, I can answer that to her straight away. Russia and China are part of the globalist movement. Russia and China are Zionists. Russia and China both developed their communist system, which was created by Zionist Jewry. That is the origins of communism. It is Zionism. It's another arm of Zionism, and Zionism, of course, is the political arm of Judaism. And we are now living, as far as I'm concerned, we are living in a biblical prophecy. We are living in the reincarnation of Sodom and Gomorrah. And you can see that, especially in the West, with the filthy immorality that people like Epstein and Netanyahu and all these other dirty scumbag pedophiles. The West their leaders are ruled by pedophiles. We've got them here in the UK in Parliament. You've got them in Canada, according to stories you related to me earlier about Justin Trudeau. The United States is full of them. Hollywood is full of them. And these people, they get away with it. Money talks, money has power. And then, the sheer, I don't know what the word is, it's more than disappointment. Okay, yes, we've got millions of people out on the streets demonstrating in favor of Gaza, but nothing has changed. It's still the same. The so-called peace treaty that Donald Trump pumped up on behalf of the Israelis hasn't stopped the killing. They're still bombing Gaza. We've lost nearly 300 people since the ceasefire agreement. But nobody says anything. Where the hell is the United Nations? Where is it? Where are the United Nations forces? But then again, the UNIFIL is a foreign army. This is what it was created for. And if you go into all this conspiracy theory thing, because the United Nations used to be.
What you're referring to?
United Nations used to be the League of Nations, and then it changed into the UN. And then, according to people like David Icke, they said that the United Nations UNIFIL, their army, is another form of these Masonic people, globalists, taking over other countries. They sent UN forces into Bosnia, didn't they? And look what happened in Bosnia. You had the massacre in Bosnia, and this was under the eyes of the United Nations forces. And then you had the same happen in Lebanon, 2014, and I think, was it 2006? No, 2006. They sent in UNIFIL, United Nations forces, and the Israelis were allowed to carry out 3 massacres, especially the one in Cana. It was under the full glare of the UN, and they did nothing. UNIFIL didn't stop the Israelis at all. And then I question Russia's role in all this. Uh, why did Russia and China abstain? Why?
That's a big
If they
question.
declared support, they declared support and concern for the self-determination of the Palestinian people, and they also, voted for this, it's a dead horse, this two-state solution. It was never viable in the first place. And I'll tell you something, there's no way in hell that the Palestinians will want a two-state solution after what they've done in Gaza. Do you seriously think that my people are going to agree to a state with a neighbor like the Israelis, the mass murdering Israelis? They're not going to have, they're not going to want a state like that right under their noses. And also, I want to correct something which people always overlook. Palestine existed since time immemorial. Palestine does not need to be created. A Palestinian state does not need to be created. It already existed. It's the Israeli state that was created. My people have lived in that area since time immemorial. They may not have been called Palestinians at that time, that, collectively, just as Romans, Italians today are not called Romans, but in biblical times they were referred to as Romans, and the British weren't called British then, they were Anglo-Saxons. And then you had the Nordics, the Saxons and the Vikings. It's the same in Palestine. Why does everybody completely give a different overview of Palestine and the Palestinian people? Why can't they share the rights of everybody else? Why? We are living in a biblical prophecy. We are going through an immoral, sick Sodom and Gomorrah scenario.
Well, I'm going to just jump in there. This word sodomy has a particular visceral quality to it, especially given that people who end up in prisons, Palestinian prisons, are often not charged with anything. They didn't do anything wrong. They just keep thousands of Palestinians in prison to be tortured and to face sodomy, systematic state-run systems of anal fucking between men or between men and dogs.
Yeah.
And when the Palestinian people are asked, well, is this a good thing to do? The overwhelming thrust of things is people want this to continue. They want to have sodomy as a symbol of their country. So we've got the genocidal state of Israel. We've got the sodomy state of Israel. We've got the starvation, child-killing state of Israel. But this sodomy, has this kind of visceral impact on our times because these pedophiles, what do pedophiles do? What do those who like to express their dominance over others, how do they want to express sexuality? And so this image of sodomy, which is, in the Bible and is seen by many people as, it's a crime. It's an evil thing. It's not a natural thing.
It's not a crime in the Jewish Bible. It might be in the Christian Bible and the Quran, but it is not. It is not a criminal thing.
We're not talking about
Torah or the Talmud. They legitimize it. Their rabbis legitimize it. They say it's okay.
Well, we're not. I guess you could make a distinction between voluntarily consenting sodomy, but what is going on in Palestinian prisons is not consenting sodomy. It's the application of sodomy as some kind of punishment. You're Palestinian. You're a dirty, filthy person. This is what you deserve. This is the kind of mental environment that we want you to be living in, and we're going to impose this. And then the imagery of the IDF going into women's panty places and lingerie places, and posing with their lingerie, and I guess pedophilia is a very major phenomenon in Israel because people get charged with it. They go there. They have no extradition treaties. So there's no way of this Epstein matter, which resulted in the full Congress voting to expose the Epstein files. It seems to me that there's many things about Trump that aren't even in the Epstein files, that really have nothing to do with the Epstein files. He raped girls and boys and
he
paid
paid
and,
off the
and
parents.
paid
Yeah,
and
and he
paid
paid
for
off the
families.
parents. He did out of court settlements with a lot of the parents, and that actually is a blight on the parents for accepting dirty money from this rapist. Your child is raped and sodomized by the
Yeah.
likes of Trump, and yet the parents accept financial settlements. I mean, what does that say about the parents? You know,
And what does it say about the whole system of governance, where this is, can be found on the open internet? It's not that hard to find this material. I worked on this subject of the Epstein matter I thought I understood it, but then as I started to look into it, and the obvious place that you end up looking is the situation with the women, with the former girls who've now grown up and are, and obviously have been scarred and,
and that poor
tortured.
woman, what's her name? I can never remember her name.
Uh,
Gila something. The one who
Guifrey,
died. Yeah, yeah, her. I can never
and
remember her
the
name.
farmer sisters are emerging. There's
She
some
died early, didn't she? She died early. I mean, can you imagine the trauma that woman throughout
She
her
was
early
heroic,
life?
man. She wrote a book. She got people in court. The early court cases, it was all motivated by these women who were the victims, and they did have a period where they got Epstein and Maxwell into court, giving a testimony. But the real Epstein papers are the Epstein papers that haven't been created. So far the only people who actually molested children are Epstein and Maxwell. And all these thousands of young people involved, apparently nobody else was involved. But, obviously there were thousands and thousands of people involved, and thousands of people who are, the most powerful people in the world. And so the real Epstein files should be the court documents for the court cases that haven't happened. The thousands and thousands of court cases of, child molestation and rape
Abuse.
and abuse that haven't taken place. And that fact that, we're at this point in late 2025 and no such cases have taken place. You hear it goes on, but, we still, the names and all of this, like the major part of the Epstein files is the part that hasn't been made yet, which is to do with the legal proceedings that we have not had. And by virtue of them not having legal proceedings, and by virtue of the fact that the International Court of Justice, for instance, can pass these motions on genocide, and we have laws about, the Genocide Convention for the prohibition and prevention of the crime of genocide, but it never gets enforced. And pedophilias can act like pedophilias, and they never get the laws imposed on them. So we have this chosenite culture, this culture where the law is kind of a farce, where it applies to some people, and some people get it enforced on them in a ruthless fashion, in the name of the rule of law. But, there's this elite faction that never have to face any consequences, who are above the law. And this makes a statement about the nature of our civilization these days that is intolerable, that makes it so that any submission to police culture is a submission to some kind of terrorist cabal thug gang, because the people who are supposed to be enforcing the law are in fact enforcing the impunity people who are above the law. And so how are we going to move forward on?
There is no rule of law, Tony. There is no rule of
Yeah.
law. The, the, the law is an ass.
Mhm.
I said that to my sister. My sister's a solicitor. And I said to her, the law is an ass. And look who runs, most of the judicial system. I don't know about Canada, but in the United States and here in the UK, about 98% of them are Jewish. It's very apt that it's called judiciary. It's very, very apt. The ICJ is a joke. I've said this before. I actually blame the ICJ for the continuation of Israel's genocide since they made that ridiculous statement about plausible genocide when it was under the American president of the ICJ. And then she was replaced by that idiot Lebanese guy who they shipped off to Lebanon afterwards to become their stooge in Lebanon. And then they rewarded the Ugandan woman who was the only one who voted for the Israelis during the hearing in 2024.
The
And hey
Christian
ho,
judge.
she's now the president, would you believe? And
Mm.
and she bases her voting on the fact that she's an evangelical Christian and she has to go by her Christian values in supporting the Jews because Jesus Christ was a Jew, which is not true. Jesus Christ was not a Jew. He was never born a Jew. He started his new faith from day dot. And Israel did not exist in his time. The Israeli entity did not exist in his time. Like I said, in those days, people weren't called Arabs as a collective. They belonged to a variety of tribes. As God states in the Quran and also in the Bible, I believe, God said, we created you into tribes and nations so that ye may know one another. And this was what constituted Palestine, aka Canaan, as we say. And within Canaan, even under the ancient Greeks, when they ruled it as an empire, and then you had the Romans, and of course, Palestine since day dot has been colonized by a variety of imperialists and colonialists, from ancient Greece, Romans, Mongols, the Crusaders, the Ottomans, the British, and of course East Europeans now, the Ashkenazi Khazars. People in those days were known by their tribes. They were the Jebusites, the Mennonites, the Canaanites, the Philistines, and what's the other one? The ones that they call the Jews. I can't remember what they're called. But the Israelis
Likes,
begins with the P, but I can't remember it. Sorry, I'm really tired.
Pharisees?
Pharisees, that's the word I was looking
Mm.
for. Yes. In those days, these people were not collectively known as Arabs. All these different tribes that I'm and the Samaritans. You had the Samaritans, and they even to this day the Samaritans exist in Jerusalem, especially. There are Samaritan Jews, there are Muslim Samaritans, although they are mostly of Jewish faith. But the state of Israel did not exist in biblical times, and I blame the Christian, the Vatican, and other Christian, hierarchies who have propagated this fake myth about, Israel. When you talk about the children of Israel, we're not talking about the children of the state of Israel. We are talking about the tribes of Jacob, whose name was renamed to Israel. I can't remember what it had a definition. I think it meant warrior, but I can't remember.
And
But
some people would look at, since Jesus became the Savior and was crucified and died for the sins of people, the people who love Jesus and form a community of believers around Christ the Lord. This is the polity of Israel. The founders of New England thought they were the chosen people of Israel. The people in Dutch South Africans,
Yeah.
the Reformed Church of South Africa, they saw themselves as
Yeah, the
Israeli,
Boers, yeah,
as
the
the
yeah.
chosen people. There's many groups that have seen themselves as Israelis. Israel isn't just because you say I'm Israeli. Look, here's my passport. I'm Israeli. Well, there's many ways to think about who the real Israelis are, and it has a lot to do with how you see history and how you see this period in history that Jesus came as a Jew, was renounced by his own people, was crucified by his own people, and condemned by his own people. Then Jerusalem was conquered by the Romans, and the Jews disseminated and left that territory by and large.
Yes, but it wasn't Israel. It wasn't a state. The Jews, the Hebrews, who were supposed to, if you believe the stories about Moses and the Red Sea and Pharaoh and all that stuff, which I put into question. I mean, Moses never arrived in Palestine. He wandered the deserts of Sinai for 40 years. He was banned. His tribe were banned because they went against God. And the people who finally entered Palestine, or the land of Canaan, they were Hebrews, yes, but they set up shop, as putting it simply. They set up shop in a tiny little community within the land of Canaan, and this little community, they gave it their own name. They called it Judea and Samaria, but it wasn't a state.
Mm-hmm.
It was just tiny communities that engulfed the Hebrews. Under, I think it was Joshua who successfully brought in the Hebrews, into ancient Palestine, and Canaan as well. I mean, it was the Greeks who renamed Canaan. They renamed it Palestina. It was the ancient Greeks who renamed it. And you see, this gives the Israelis today. I read a lot of Israeli websites and stuff like that, and they keep saying, oh, Palestine never existed. Palestine never existed. It's made up. It's made up. You see, it didn't help that the Greeks renamed it Palestina, and they only choose parts of ancient history that suits them, but they won't accept it from a realistic, factual basis. They love rewriting history. They've rewritten biblical history. They've rewritten modern history. They've given us this bullshit with their hollow hoax. And more people now are beginning to realize this. And like you said earlier on, Tony, if people around the world do not stop the Israelis carrying out this annihilation of my people, you are going to become next, I tell you. You're giving them carte blanche to do to you what they've been doing to my people. And it didn't start 2 years ago with October the 7th. This has been going on even pre-1948, is when the Rothschilds started bringing in their bloody Jewry from Europe. This has been ongoing. And, for people to think, oh, this all started on October the 7th, and, blame the Palestinians, they started it all, they attacked the Israelis. Yes, but you don't understand why they attacked the Israelis. You didn't hear about the Israelis murdering nearly 300 Palestinians in the West Bank. Every single day you hear about, 5 to 10 Palestinians a day being shot in the West Bank. And then we've got the horrors of the prisons in Sidr, whatever it's called, and some other, the other prisons in the Negev, where they're being brutally sodomized, they're being raped, and they're ripping the anuses of their victims. They're destroying their sexual organs. This is intentional. And also something else which your viewers might not know is that Israeli snipers are shooting children's organs. They're shooting them in their sexual organs. This is all to stop the procreation of a future Palestinian people. They are, they are killing and they are destroying their sexual organs. And everything that is happening in Gaza, it far exceeds the word genocide. I don't know if there is a word that in the English language that would describe it more aptly. Genocide isn't enough. I mean, they have no fuel, no electricity, no clean water, no beneficial food. Some of the food that is brought in through humanitarian aid is, by the way, a lot of it is out of date, which they don't tell you about. A lot of them are full of maggots. As soon as you open up the packaging, it's full of maggots, as witnesses in Gaza will tell you. The water you can't drink, it's polluted. I mean, is it any surprise when Israel has dropped over, over 80,000 tons of bombs on Gaza, which far exceeds any bombings of both World War I and World War II. And then, Israel held a conference in Tel Aviv, inviting, I think it was 20 nations who turned up to show them their prowess of what they've done in Gaza. I mean, really, this is psychopathy. Who in their right mind would invite other countries to see how you've been murdering people for the last 2 years?
Well,
and of course they use Gaza. They've been using Gaza as a live lab rat. All these European countries with their weapons, they've been using my people as their guinea pigs. And then they brag about it at their arms trade fairs. This is what this and this has done. This is the result of your bomb. This is the result of your F-35s. This is the result of your laser technology and all these other horrible, nefarious WMDs. And by the way, I'd like to mention one thing to you, which I don't think other people talk about, but it's my personal sort of inkling. It's my gut tells me. You hear about the dreadful weather, the rainstorms that
No.
people in Gaza are enduring today, flooding their tents and so on and so forth. Please tell me, Tony, how come that these storms only affect Palestinian refugees and the Gazans, but it doesn't affect the Israelis in the north of Gaza?
Well, I could take that a little further and say this lack of water in Iran, where there is a drought, where there isn't enough water. I mean, that would not be that difficult to arrange through geoengineering. There's a targeting of Iran, and Iran is suffering from a lack of water. Is this a technique of warfare now, geoengineering, affecting of weather? Like, there's lots of indication that it is. Now, this experimentation that you talk about, I mean, one of the big areas of experimentation in these days, maybe the biggest of all, is the ultimate battlefield is in our minds, is in our imagination, is in our attitudes, is in our way of making sense of the world or not making sense of the world. And so the United States has become a kind of testing laboratory for a real contest, a real war of sorts for the public opinion, because for the first time since really World War II, Israelis, Israel First Zionists are having to face the fact that even in the United States, there is a preponderance of public opinion who identifies more with the situation, the abominable situation of the Palestinians, and are against what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. And this is a first. And, let's face it, that there's a certain young man by the name of Nicholas J. Fuentes with his late night television shows being largely emanating from and directed at Gen Z, the generation that have really been cheated out of, decent futures in the United States, where there's little work, the economy is going down, 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 secure jobs are less and less, and then Trump brings in 600,000 Chinese students, and, the Democrats open the borders. And so this question of is the United States actually run by Israel? Is the U.S. government so dominated, which we could see with Biden, which we could see with Trump, that this promise of Israel first has become, what we are in fact delivered, what the American people got instead of Israel first, or make America great again. And so this, whether it be Fuentes himself or Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, there's a range of people who are breaking it out. Dave Smith, people who are talking about these issues in a wide open way, and really begging the question and forcing the issue of, why should the U.S. government be so subject and subordinate to the agendas of Israel and the desire of Israel, for instance, to eliminate Iran because they can't do their Greater Israel scheme and expand their imperial power as long as Iran in its present form is in place. And so this quest to eliminate Iran and to somehow compromise Trump, so that he's already, got involved in a war with Iran as U.S. president. This is basically become the central question now in U.S. politics. Is U.S. going to back up Israel and attack Iran and get them, back up their position? And how are they going to handle the psychological manipulation, the psychological engineering, if they're going to attempt to, continue to go in this direction?
Can I interject?
Yeah.
You talked about the United States and Trump bringing in 600,000 Chinese students. I thought Trump was anti-China and was against anything anti-China. So why the hell did he allow 600,000 Chinese students to come into the country? And secondly...
Well, it's a plan. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it means so many less seats and good positions for American students.
I think this is all political theatre. I think all three of them, Russia, America, China, I think they talk to each other. They toast each other with their whiskies and their vodkas and everything else, while they're plotting and planning against everybody else. And another thing, this whole business with the Epstein files. Okay, yes, Epstein and Maxwell are at the heart of it. No, actually, not at the heart of it all. But people are overlooking the most important element in this whole Epstein scandal, And that is the role that the Israelis and Netanyahu are playing. Netanyahu's got all of Epstein's videos, which he's been using to blackmail world leaders and silence them and bribe them and everything else. So really, okay, yes, blame Epstein and Maxwell. They are the vassals. Those two are the vassals. But we've really got to talk about the role that the Israeli government and Netanyahu have been playing in all this. This is the Israelis, as usual. They're heavily involved in Africa. Look what they've done to Sudan. And another genocide in Sudan. We had the Darfur massacre, which the Israelis were behind, and then they divided they divided Sudan into two, and they took control of the north, which just happened to have the oil. And now we've got this dreadful genocide in El Fashar. They're estimating about 120 million or something people dead, been massacred there. And again, no one's doing anything. The United Nations has, UN just talks. The West just talks. All these demonstrators that are out on the streets. Look, I've been going on the streets of London since I was about 17 years old. And look at me. I'm well past the 70 mark now, and I've still been going out on the streets. And to be honest with you, nothing has changed other than that the weaponry that the Israelis have been using has been more lethal and permanent than anything they've used in the past. They have completely polluted Gaza. I don't understand how Trump wants to create a Riviera in Gaza when the whole area is contaminated and polluted. How are these people going to survive? And then you've got Israeli ministers saying, "Oh, we should nuke Gaza." These Jews think that they're immune to a nuclear fallout. They seriously, in their mindset, think that their Yahweh is going to save them from a nuclear fallout. How can you build a Riviera when you've absolutely destroyed the soil? You've destroyed God's soil. You've destroyed the water. You've polluted the seas. How the hell are you going to build a Riviera there? Riviera isn't just about buildings and Trump hotels and casinos and whatnots. How are you going to survive on soil that you've contaminated? I tell you something, they have been using mini nukes in Gaza, just as they use mini nukes in Syria and in Beirut, the one that they dropped on them some years ago. That was a mini nuke. Israel has the technology. Israel has hundreds, if not thousands, of nuclear weapons, and it's aided and abetted by the United States, by the British, and by Germany. We mustn't forget the good old role of Nazi Germany, which wholeheartedly supports the Israelis because of their guilt complex because of what Hitler supposedly did. And Hitler was one of their tribe anyway. Well, half of their tribe. He was half Jewish, Mr. Hitler. I don't support anything he did anyway. And people overlook, the millions of other people that Hitler and his Nazis, slaughtered. The gypsies, the Romanis, the disabled. The Jews were a tiny fraction of what was going on during World War II. The whole of World War I and World War II were one big Holocaust. If you use the term from its original definition, the Greek definition, Holocaust means massive death and destruction or great loss of life, especially by firepower. And that's exactly what they've been using against the Palestinian people even pre 1948. And this is something that, people now, today, thankfully, have awoken to. And many of them, I look at a lot of videos on TikTok, although TikTok now is censoring everything and, taking them off. But Americans, ordinary Americans have come to the realization that, they've been taken for a ride by the Jews, by the Israelis. They're destroying their own country, and Americans have allowed the Jews to do this. And this is the plan of Jewry and Israel in particular, is to destroy the United States as the superpower so that they can replace it as the new superpower under their greater Eretz Israeli empire, which I've been speaking about for donkey's years. And, in the past, people used to dismiss me for bringing up the topic. And, I've said this to you so many times, I've been accused of being an anti-Semite, which is rich, seeing that I am a Semite myself. Palestinians are more Semitic than the vast majority, 90% of Jewish squatters in my father's homeland. They're not Semites at all. They're all Khazarian converts to Judaism. Just because you follow what was classified as a Semitic religion, which Judaism, the original Judaism, was classified as, it doesn't mean that today's Jews are Semitic. They're not. They may have followed a Semitic religion, but they're not Semitic. It's like Christianity. Christianity also is a Semitic religion because it comes from the Semitic region of the Middle East. But that doesn't mean that every Christian in the world is a Semite. I mean, you're a Christian. Does that mean that you can lay claim to Palestine because that's where Jesus Christ originated from? It's just ludicrous.
Well, as we start to head towards some kind of conclusion here, think of the people who are now fronting for the Israel First Zionist lobby in the United States, like Randy Fine, Ben Shapiro,
Yeah.
Kevin Weir, and the Mr. Sodom and Gomorrah himself, Lindsey Graham, Miss Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
Like, this is what the Israel First lobby, these are their main spokespeople these days, versus, say, Tucker Carlson, who I think, does have come from a CIA family and, is deeply immersed in that culture. But in any case, he's quite popular. And there is a new inclination, especially on the right wing, the Conservative Party, the GOP, the Republican Party, this division that really goes back, I think, to this young man, Fuentes, Nicholas J. Fuentes. So the issue has now become discussable. It is actually in front of us. I live in Canada, but all my life, I'm aware that the main things that seem to define my life really go on in the United States.
Can I ask you something about Fuentes? I don't know if did you see these videos circulating with the ex-mayor of New York, Eric something or another, I can't remember his surname, where he went and paid he revisited Jerusalem and as usual, wearing the kippah cap and doing his usual ritual at the urinal wailing wall. Did Fuentes say anything about this ex-mayor going to Israel and proclaiming his continuous love for the Israeli people?
Well, he's
I'm
always
just
going
curious.
on with that subject, but of course, the new mayor of New York,
Yeah,
the Muslim fellow,
Mamdani.
Mamdani, this also sort of changes the formula of things a lot. Um,
I'm
so,
curious, actually. I'm curious. I'm curious to know
And I think it
how
came up
he,
that Eric Adams, like there was some kind of a group who were saying, well, where are you going to go next? Where are you going to visit? And they all say, well, of course, I'm going to Israel.
yeah,
I'd
and
love
he
to
was
go
the
to
only one who
Israel.
didn't.
And Mom Donnie didn't say that. And interestingly, he apparently is going to do boycotts, divestment, and sanctions, and he wants to create a sort of financial system for his politics, which call into question, the whole treatment of the Palestinians by the U.S.-Israeli merger state.
But I'm still curious, Tony. I'm still curious about Mamdani's victory. I'm not belittling him, but I'm still curious. I'm still curious as to why the alleged 30% of Jewish New Yorkers decided to allow him to win the mayorship. There's something fishy going
Oh,
on.
of course, there's a
They have an
deep
agenda. They
aspect
use
to all of
people.
these. Yeah, and remember when Obama came out, and it seemed so wonderful and so spectacular that such a person would emerge from the system, and with such good intentions, and look at how that turned out. So you become cynical, but nevertheless, there is a breaking open all my lifetime, and you find out there's certain topics that if you talk about them insistently, you get in a lot of trouble for. And some of us find out in a very sort of graphic, visceral
Oh,
way.
it's happening it terribly in the UK. People
And,
are being
the United
arrested
States
for
is,
tweeting and posting comments on X or making a small video saying that they oppose they oppose the genocide in Palestine.
yeah, and if
We were
you,
talking about arms. It turns out the Elbit system, which the Palestine Action Movement was attacking. Apparently, they've made an absolute obscene profit in the last 2 years from this war, and the same with Germany and Turkey. We mustn't forget Turkey. Everybody thinks, oh, Turkey supports the Palestinian people. No, it doesn't. Turkey is run by Donma Jews, the Sabbatai and Zevi Jews.
and
Uh,
the sabotage of the U.S. university system,
yeah.
where if you are seen to be critical of Israel, you can be deplatformed and you can't get an education. And this makes a farce of any idea that university education in the United States is some kind of
Yes, the
honest.
academia. If you read Professor David Miller, he'll tell
Yeah,
you 95% of academia in this country is run by Zionists, and if they propagate Israeli Hasbara. Um, Academia. I was always told supposed to be neutral, and you're supposed to present facts instead of taking sides.
and
But
have
that's not
discussions,
the case with academia.
not just try to deplatform and destroy the reputation and career of your opponent. You're
And
supposed
people's
to.
lives. They've gone that far to suicide, in inverted commas,
Mm,
suicide people.
yeah. Oh,
And it's not questioned. Look what they did to Charlie Kirk because he turned.
yeah.
They killed him, and there's stories going around about 5 Israeli cell phones were discovered uh, used in the area where Charlie Kirk was on the
Mm.
podium or something. And then I saw something else which I didn't understand. I'll send it to you. It showed you it's all to do with superstition and mysticism of the Kabbalah
Mm.
cult, and it showed you the menorah, and it showed you what each arm of the menorah represents. And according to this piece that I saw, it claims, I'm just telling you what they're saying. I'm not saying that I understand it or believe it or whatever, but I think anything's possible today. It's basically saying that where he was seated corresponds to one of the arms of the menorah, and this particular arm represents the blood sacrifice. And this is something, the Jews are well known for, blood sacrifices during the Middle Ages and after that, with sacrificing Christian children and so on, which they always used to refer to as blood libel. But there were so many priests and so on who have, validated this claim. It's like you mentioned very early on in our discussion about organ harvesting. There was a Scandinavian journalist who exposed the fact that the Israelis were harvesting the organs of Palestinians, and he was threatened by the Israelis. He lost his job as a journalist, and then a few months later, turns out that an Israeli doctor came out and openly admitted that yes, that is what we were doing, although we stopped it now, which is not true. They have never stopped it. And by the way, the organ harvesting is also done on live Palestinians. They take out their organs when they're alive. And it's a very lucrative business. Like, I don't know, do you remember a few years back they arrested a rabbi in New York for organ harvesting? And then you got the stories of organ harvesting in Argentina, and also Israeli doctors were caught harvesting corneas in Haiti when they apparently went there for humanitarian assistance. And a journalist, I can't remember where he was from, he stumbled on a bag and it contained corneas that they took out of the victims of people in Haiti. I mean, it's widespread, and it's not just, by the way, it's not just organ harvesting. Israel has the highest lucrative skin grafting business. They take the skin of our people as well. So basically what I'm saying is, even when we're dead, we're not safe. They attack our cemeteries. They take our DNA. And for years, Israeli scientists have been trying to create a special weapon that only directs Palestinian DNA. This is something the Telegraph wrote about 10-15 years ago. It was in the national newspaper. So they have organ harvesting, which is very lucrative. They have skin harvesting, which is very lucrative, and Israel is at the highest in organ trafficking. They're involved in organ trafficking, skin grafting, drug smuggling, money laundering, pornography, human trafficking of young women for sex, and for children as well, which falls into the realm of pedophilia.
And then all these terms come up, and then this word trope is thrown at you. Trope,
Yeah.
trope, as if this is just a stereotype and a ludicrous thing. I'll wrap up, if you don't mind, by just mentioning, Maisoon, that nobody's really raised it yet, but I'm sort of posing you as the non-Barry Weiss, the free press platform run by Barry Weiss on Substack. The Barry Weiss was now editor-in-chief of CBS News. CBS News somehow is absorbing the free press platform of Barry Weiss. She's being paid hundreds of millions of dollars to advise CBS, and Larry Ellison and his son David on this. So I'm sort of posing you as the alternative to Barry Weiss.
Barry White, whoever she is, and all the other, she's not the only one, Tony. They all are. Your
Yeah.
media, your media is under their control. All their pundits are of that ilk. They're all paid by that ilk. This is Israeli Hasbara. For God's sake, they pay students, university students to.
Well, that's what Barry Weiss was at Columbia. She was, came forward to complain about her Middle East studies professors and whatnot. That's how she made a name for herself.
She's not
But in
the
any case,
not the only
you
one.
know,
You know,
I it's a
just
big
and
subject.
it's
I tried to raise the subject. You know,
just
the whole organization of the media empires of Zionists, of Israel First proponents, and all of this.
she's a little fish in a bigger tank.
Yeah,
There's far more, lying propagandists than this woman that you
yeah.
like to sort of bring up and compare
Yeah,
as an
part of
alternative
part
to
of
me.
the thing is that we're on a free speech platform called Substack, and
Yeah.
I sort of thought Substack would be guided by some sort of idea that dissident voices are very important, and yet I see that Substack is actually as the platform for the reformation of CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System, which is the big leagues of U.S. media. Larry Ellison, owner of Oracle, taking over TikTok.
Yeah.
He's going to buy CNN, and he bought Paramount, and uh, so so it's kind of like, uh, well, free press. Substack has free press, and they're with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu's best friend, and CBS, and then there's looking out at the world from Canada. But we have Maisoon Rice here on this platform, who I think blows away Barry Weiss in terms of your ability to talk about the issues as they really are.
I'd like to blow away foul people like Ben Shapiro and people like him and
Well,
Tommy
we're getting our
Robinson
chance.
here in the UK.
And
I mean, we've got a lot of Barry Weisses all over the place.
yeah,
She's not the only one. Um,
better believe it. You
I
couldn't
believe
get more journalism.
more and more people need to speak out and not be afraid to speak out. They're worried about the anti-Semitic label. I don't give a shit about the anti-Semitic
Yeah.
label. They can take it and shove it where the sun don't shine, as they say. I don't care. I speak facts. I try and back what what I say. If I get anything wrong, then it's unintentional. But we've been basically lied to throughout our history, both biblical and modern history. And it's time that we had a world revolution where the people of the world stood up, revolted against those that are ruling them, who do not represent them at all. They represent self-interest. They represent the corporations, the banksters, big business. It's all at the crux of the matter. It all boils down to money. Money is power, and money buys power. Money buys politicians. Money buys governments. And
Okay.
I just want the collapse. For me, I want the total collapse of the, the, the Jewish financial empire, and I want the collapse of the Israeli entity.
Hallelujah.
I hope that happens, inshallah. I pray to God that that happens and happens soon before they completely annihilate and exterminate my people, which is, coming to the fore, sadly. Uh,
In,
you know.
inshallah.
Inshallah,
Inshallah.
I hope so. We need God's intervention before it's too late. We are desperate. We need God's intervention because I believe He's the only one who could stop this satanic pedophilia world that we are living in. This ghastly repetition of Sodom and Gomorrah, which we were told would return, and it's infested, especially the West, and of course they've taken their filth to the Arab Gulf states as well, who are traitors to not only to the Arab nation but to Islam itself. Horrible. I pray for their downfall as well. And we
Oh,
shall see, Tony.
salut.
Okay, so that's it then.
Okay.
Wish you a pleasant